talk about community a lot in the conversation from the Crossroads, and this is one of those examples of the community that I have been able to pull together in my life. The friendship and the conversation that you're about to hear comes out of community from my time in the world of history museums and historical societies and the like. That's been my professional career for a number of years. Ahmad Ward, I first met when he was at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. And you'll hear a whole bunch about the civil rights movement in this conversation. Bigger than that, I know Ahmad as a husband, as a father, and as a Southerner, as someone who I have been living life side by side with for 6 years virtually. A group of folks who meet every Thursday and have been since the very beginning of the pandemic. And I'm really pleased to have Ahmad come sit at the Crossroads and discuss Southern music, Southern history, Southern culture in the context of how we remember the past. Without further ado, Ahmad Ward at the Crossroads of Southern music, history, and culture.
Sometimes the best things are notes that just go out in the air. Connection's my thing, right? And I'm no longer within institutions anymore, which is actually very good for me and good for my soul. However, I have this amazing group of people who not only do this within institutions, but do it in their lives, in private habits, people who do music and art and preserve history, all these things. It's not even just history either. So my goal was to start to sort of share these connections, because I think that, the thoughtfulness with which we go about the world is a lesson that I think people could benefit from. And also, as you know from our time together, I'll do a more formal invite here, but just so everybody knows, Ahmad and I work in history museums together. We have been rolling strong for 6 years this March. We're filming this in February of 2026, but the very beginning of the pandemic, we joined up in a little cohort of just museum leaders, just trying to make some sense. And we have been through some stuff because that evolved into George Floyd and that real tumultuous summer. It's just the insurrection showed up, and how we have as fathers, husbands, leaders in our profession continue to do our thing. So Ahmad is like one of those people. And Ahmad, I was thinking about this morning. One of the members of that group, Charity Counts, called together that session at AAM in Phoenix, and I think it was 2019 on risk taking. 2018. So yeah. This is 2 years beforehand. So you were in that as well. I remember, as was Michelle Moon was in the audience, because I remember she came over to me. She goes, "That was one of the best sessions I've ever been in my life." We were both like shaken, moved, doing it. So, I've been watching it. We've got civil rights history to talk about a little bit. I do want to get into that. Music is always a big, important part here. But the piece I wrote first was being a Southerner, because you are a Southerner.
Absolutely.
And you come from Southern people.
Yeah. Born and bred.
And you struggle also probably with Southern identity, just like I do, but in a whole different way, which is one of the things that makes I think our friendship special, because we have been so honest with each other in private moments together. But so, this is Conversations from the Crossroads of Southern Music, History, and Culture. And each of us as humans are the crossroads of Southern music, history, and culture, you and me. And then we meet at this one particular history museum crossroads, civil rights history museum crossroads in particular. But let's talk about being a Southerner for a little bit for you. Like you can share your pedigree, if you will, where you're from, or like, where you went to school, where your people are from, but in general, what's it mean to you? And then, what does it mean to be navigating the world as a Southerner right now? Southern man. There's a deep one for you.
Yeah. You're starting out the gate. So Bob, first of all, glad to be with you. Thanks for inviting me to come and do this. I am born and bred in a small town called Elizabeth City, North Carolina, which is about 55 miles inland from Nags Head, Kitty Hawk, that area, the Outer Banks, upper northeast corner. So the closest big city to us, big, quote unquote, big, was Norfolk, Virginia. So because I'm from there, I had to slow down the pronunciation of all of these names because we don't say anything like that. If I said I'm from Elizabeth City, I had to slow it down because we all say Elizabeth City. Elizabeth City. Like everybody knows what that is. And we definitely don't say Norfolk. You have to cuss when you say no. I almost said it. You say Norfolk.
Norfolk.
Norfolk. Everybody there we go to Norfolk. You know. So that's my area, mid-Atlantic, um, just really kind of a rural area. My town was the city, which is hilarious because we only had like 19,000 people in there. But my town was where you went to go do things and get stuff. Like, the Walmart's in Elizabeth City. Oh, okay. Well, we got to go over there. The mall at the time was in Elizabeth City. So that's my background. Went to school uh, all through grade school there. Even went to college there, Elizabeth City State University, HBCU, and went to Hampton University for grad school up in Virginia, which is only an hour away from where I grew up. So that first year and a half of my 2-year program, I commuted because we had to go. If you want to do something fun, you had to go up to the Seven Cities, Tidewater Peninsula area to go do something fun. You had to move there. So uh, it was funny growing up there because when I would go up north, we had family up in Jersey City. We go there almost every summer. There, like I had like overalls on and I had wheat hanging out of my mouth and no shoes. I just sounded like a complete, hick, right? But then if I go to the deep South, they would tell us we weren't Southern enough because we were in the middle of the Eastern Seaboard. So no, you're not South for real. North Carolina doesn't count. Virginia doesn't count. So it's an interesting kind of stepchild dichotomy growing up in a little area, Albemarle County, Pasquotank County, Albemarle area, where I grew up. And so it's very interesting because I did spend a lot of time in the upper northeast uh, corner of the country at that point. But then later on, when I moved to Birmingham, Alabama for my first real gig as a professional in the museum field, then I'm in the deep South. And I wasn't, I was in I was Yankee then, it's like, oh, this dude, look I don't have an accent for real. So it's like, where are you from? Oh, get out of here, man. You're not Southern. So it's been it's been an interesting experience. But we're definitely, trust me, North Carolina is as south as they come, especially the things that we've had to deal with. And then, uh, we, given the backdrop of what we've been able to do, what you and I have been talking about here for years, I was trying to remember where we actually met. It might have been SCMC or a conference up in Birmingham a long time ago. And I was
I
trying to
think
figure
it
it
was
out.
so. I think 2013 we did our conference at the Civil Rights Institute was our host. Were you still there in 2013?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, then that
Absolutely.
might have been at me, and maybe also at CMC, and certainly cross paths whenever we'd be at national conferences and stuff like that. But and then we visited before that, and that might have been exactly when it was because I'd always grab a trip in the front end. So I'd go see and make sure that my people were down with doing this, before we moved everything lock, stock, and barrel. Like, okay. And so that could have been it. So but around that time, y'all had been open a good while at that
Oh
point.
yeah, the place opened in 1992.
Did you?
So
Oh, you didn't know? Oh, Jesus. Did you? You didn't open it then,
no,
obviously.
no, I got there summer of 1999, about 2 weeks before my 24th birthday. Yeah, so I got into it young. Got into
Hey,
it young.
I was 20, 99, 24. And I too started my career in August of 1999 with in the museum profession. So we're homies.
Hey
We're
man,
homies on that.
class of
And once again,
'99, class of
it was meant to be all along. You know, let me dig in on this Southern thing. This is so funny. First of all, I want to say it brings to mind the movie Crooklyn. For some reason, you telling me going up there to the city, looking like you're this, and it was that, the backwards migration there.
yeah.
Uh, the many Souths, which is something my dissertation advisor, one of my mentors, Tennessee State historian Van West, talks about a lot. And I started my dissertation with it. I dropped it when I did the book, but it was like we are very monolithic in very many ways, just like all kinds of cultures are regional and religious and anything else. But we are also not a single monolithic culture because, right, you say
Right.
North Carolina is not South. Be from a beach town 100 miles north of Miami and feel like a Southerner because that's who everybody says, and be like, well, I'm a poser Southerner. I'm a faux, I'm a carpetbagger, like you said, a Yankee or
Yeah.
whatever else. I had to move to Nashville, to be a Southerner kind of thing. And I think that was it in sort of relating to it, because that's how I was raised. It was, you are a Southern man, and a Southern man acts a certain way, or comports himself in a certain way. And it's modeled on this false lost cause thing that, I mean, I've been very honest with, was a journey for me as a younger person to sort of shake out of. I respect a lot people who do that deconstructing of that part of the past of being a Southerner. I really do. I think that, and I'll throw this question out to you. I find history very liberating when you look at what that is. The ideal of the Southern gentleman is indeed my father. This is no shit, Ahmad. I probably have a picture somewhere. He was a Kappa Alpha fraternity member. I'm assuming you're aware of them, but one of the many, lost cause white fraternities. He is at the Lost Cause. No, no, I'm sorry, at the Old South Ball, it's called, and he is in a rented Confederate in the 50s
Wow.
officer's uniform.
Wow.
In one generation, that's gone, which I think is a testament to the liberation of history more than anything else, right? Not a glory on my part or Dad's part. He didn't. The ideals were passed down to some extent, but the bad was whitewashed. What a term there, pun intended. And so I was left to kind of grapple with that thing, and that's what I did. Academically, it's what I
Right.
did professionally as a historian, and also what I do in the engagement I do in the work within the community. So history is liberation. I find it liberating.
Sure.
Push back or talk, yeah. Like what thoughts?
I think history is liberating for various reasons. Um, I I spent the lion's share of my professional career talking about the civil rights movement. And I just felt like in my interactions with people, the more that they were able to learn about the history, the better they were able to understand themselves. And so I think history is liberating because it frees you from certain shackles of misunderstanding who you are in the world, right? And what status you literally have, or the background of your people. And I think we think history is just, I was about to grab a book here. We think of history just like, something that's in a book and that's it. And when history covers a lot of ground. I mean, I think one of the most liberating things for me recently, within the last 4 or 5 years, was the ancestry work I've been doing and finding out about, my great great grandfather and great great grandmothers on both sides. And so I would agree with you that history is liberating because it helps you to break some chains that unfortunately this country will wrap around you, especially if you are of a darker hue and you think that nobody who looks like you has been accomplished or intelligent or uh, a trailblazer or a game changer. And so I've always gone into the kind of work that I've done thinking I might get into a classroom or a community center or something and tell a kid in there something they didn't know about themselves. And it might open their viewpoints. And so that's been my approach for over 26 years. Just sharing various histories with the hopes that somebody is going to be like, oh, I didn't know that. And the whole worldview changes. So yeah, I'm with you. You won't get any pushback from me about
Yeah.
history being liberating. I think it is.
The thoughts are, right. Let's talk about like Civil Rights Center, where you used to work, Birmingham, and where you are today, Mitchellville. Talk about a real moving experience, and a discussion I had with somebody about it. The Freedom Center that in Cincinnati, the
Hmm.
Underground Railroad Center, one of the more
Yeah.
powerful museums I've ever been to in my life. And two things happened there that always stick with me. The first was um, they did a normal tour. My family did while I was doing some work with them, and it was at a really good eye. At that point, I think it was an eye touch or whatever. It was like an iPad tour, but it's pre that.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
kids did this, and my little daughter Tyler, who's now about to turn 22, she was probably 4 or 5, and literally said to Candy during the thing, "Mama, who invented slavery?" Like a little kid was wise enough to consider the deeper ramifications of what she was doing. The second one was, the pen that they have there that they had found somewhere in Kentucky.
Right.
And that had a super powerful narrative. And my other daughter, Ryan, who at that point was, either 7 or 8, brought me into Daddy, you got to listen to this and put it on and listen. And it was a super, super powerful narrative. And, I just remember these two kids here are like, this is a memorable experience that's never going away because, they're just looking at the history. And there's no argument that this wasn't wrong. There's no argument that slavery wasn't wrong.
Right.
No
Right.
matter what your dad, Bob, was taught in school, in somewhat school, but certainly culturally and socially, this is a problem. And, the representation, that's the piece I wanted to get at, right? Like you just said, representation matters.
It does. It always has. You got to see yourself. You gotta understand about yourself. And if you don't, like that's why there's a there's such a visceral reaction to what's happening currently with the slave exhibition getting taken down in Philadelphia and exhibitions getting changed and things holidays no longer being like open for everybody. It's representation. Like people need to be able to see themselves in our stories, in the stories of this country, in the stories of the people who make up this space. And if you don't, you're gonna believe you'll grow up believing that you don't belong. Or there's nothing historical worth talking about when it comes to your folks. I mean, this is why Carter G. Woodson started Negro History Week 100 years ago, because he was told to his face that the Negro had no history worth recording. And so he he said, "The hell with that," and made some stuff happen. And so the kids will be all right. And I think some of what we've done is we're acting like these young people cannot handle reality. But the fact of the matter is, they know right from wrong. And that's one of the real reasons that some of the stuff they don't want to show it. It's not that they can't handle it, is that they'll be like, hey, why did y'all let this happen? Why were you involved in this? Because this seems wrong. And those are the conversations that people are trying to stop.
It's I had a conversation earlier about this today. If it wasn't a threat, if the past and open access to it wasn't a threat, they wouldn't be holding access back to it. So
Right.
either keeping you out of the narrative in the first place and focusing on a single thing, which this country has long been, or um, you know, moving monuments, right? Moving memorials, taking exhibitions out does not erase the past. It doesn't change history. It changes the present day memory, absolutely, but it doesn't erase the past, right? So you take a statue down of Robert E. Lee in Richmond, which we witnessed together, 6 years ago now. That doesn't change the fact that Robert E. Lee still led the Army of Northern Virginia and was the patron saint of the lost cause. He still
Right.
was there. Everything that happened in his name that he claimed or people claimed for him, still all of it happened. History doesn't change.
It
Our
doesn't.
interpretations of it do constant.
Right.
Um,
Especially we learn more, so you have to adapt some of, well, if you're doing it the right way. If you're doing
there you go, Earth School. Like there's Richard Josie's concept of, Earth School being exactly that, that one of the keys to surviving in this at the crossroads of where we sit, right, is to be learning and is to be
right,
adapting, right?
right.
Or you're always learning. You may not know exactly what the assignment is that you're working toward or anything like that, but you're constantly learning in Earth School.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a concept that we all should be open to. And it's just politically expedient for some of us to act like that's not a thing we've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. And now we can say, well, yeah, we don't need to learn about that anymore. Oh, we don't. Says who? It says who? Who's making that rule?
I was amazed how quickly, this one happened, this last go around. For everybody's benefit, I'm trying to be non-timely with our discussions, but we are talking in February of 2026. So, but we could be any point in the
Any point,
dystopia
any
at this
point,
point,
any
talking
point.
about things. But specifically, we know that there were no free days for Martin Luther King Day at some very important American, sites owned by the American people. That's the thing. But we've
Yeah,
also got an east wing of the White House torn down. Like if there's not a metaphor for that, in terms of
man.
like utilizing history and presentism for your own purposes, sort of across the board. Let's do this. Civil rights movement. I will contend perhaps the greatest domestic American political social movement because of the stakes, the participants, and where they had been, and really, and then of course what the changes that happened. I could equally argue for the New Deal, probably on a similar front and parts
Yeah.
of it, but like this is one of the most groundbreaking events that happened. And for me, the first time I encountered W.E.B. Du Bois, you will not believe this, Ahmad. Senior year in high school, I took a second year of American history AP, took the test, and Du Bois and Booker T. Washington were the two people I was comparing and contrasting. And Du Bois was completely new to me. This would have been spring '89, 37 years ago. So
Wow.
like that's my coming of age there. And then I think I've told you before, my first graduate class ever in history was on the New South, and Birmingham was Alabama was a really, really key part because of Wallace, Bull Connor,
Of
Birmingham.
course. Of course.
So that's where you go coming out of graduate school. Go down there to tell a very tough story that is also very, for me, inspiring. It's always been an inspiring story. But man, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
You're going to live the story differently than I would ever live because you're a black man.
It's when you talk about movement, you made a good comparison there with New Deal and civil rights movement. I think the reason I would give civil rights movement the edge is the New Deal, even though there was some sweeping changes that opened some doors, everything about it was not available to African Americans. And I always point to its GI Bill. And then how that impacted people coming back from war, and that was not available to Black soldiers,
Mm.
to build wealth through purchase of land and to have opportunities to go to universities. We couldn't just go to any university we wanted to. We had to go to try to find HBCUs, and even then, there was space limitations with some of the ones with the soldiers coming back. So you don't have the opportunity to build wealth, and that changes the outlooks of a lot of people. But the civil rights movement is the door opener for all movements that come behind it. And that's why I would give it more resonance. So the women's liberation rights of the differently abled or, handicapped, however you want to place that, Chicano movement, the American Indian movement in the 70s, like all of these things are offshoots of the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. And even now, with contemporary things, folks are looking to that as a basis. When Soweto happens in the 1980s, in South African apartheid, anti-apartheid movement, they use Birmingham as a model. So, like you've got these events happening during this. It's a 14-year period, man. If you look at it, the codified civil rights movement, I personally think that the movement starts with Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, but that's me. I think that is the jump off point and into anti-lynching movement, into the establishment of the NAACP, on and so forth, going into Great Depression and into Jim Crow holistically. But if you just look at 54 to 68, like you mentioned Alabama earlier, it's a landmark place in American history. That's where all of the big battles took place, most of them. Freedom rides, the Birmingham Civil Rights Act, the Montgomery bus boycott, Summit to Montgomery, like all of this is
Stand at
happening.
the schoolhouse door.
Stand in the schoolhouse door. This is all happening in the state of Alabama because it was just crazy there, you know. Not discounting things that happen in Georgia and Mississippi and Louisiana, things of that nature, but Alabama was like ground zero for a lot of that stuff. And so working in that space, um, and just meeting people who were just in there randomly doing like Arthurine Lee said, still standing there. Arthurine Lucy, like the first 2 weeks I'm at this building, again, I'm a snot nose. Arthurine Lucy is just in the archives volunteering. She's like doing something for the archives department. And I'm like, do you know who you are? Of course she knows who she is. But, she's just in there just volunteering, man. Like, it's wow. And so I got, being there, I got a chance to meet Andrew Young and C.T. Vivian and Vernon Jordan. And, it's all of these folks, Fred Shuttlesworth, who's one of my favorite people of all time, and who's the reason the King came to Birmingham in the first place. Like, I had an opportunity to interface with these people. And, that has shaped me, and I need to make sure that the things that I know can help shape people who come behind me. And so that to me it is one of the most important movements 20th century or historically for America, historically, because we start to get close to the ideal that everybody who is born here is supposed to be able to enjoy. And that is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, supposedly. And as we're in the 250th year of America's history, the fact that out of those 250 years is the last 60 to 70 where we really start to get to some true American ideals, you can't run from that.
Yeah, the and the way it's funny, the way I was raised, again, we're about the same age, and was, well, we already fixed all this, like it was like, yeah, we fixed all this. Why is all this, this happening, and whatever else, and that's an easy one to see through when you
Oh
start
yeah. Oh
when you
yeah.
start paying attention. The civil rights thing, the depth of it was I'm going to admit, shocking. Like at that, reading those um, books and pondering the courage that it took, right? Like Shuttle, you mentioned my guy. So, Fred Shuttlesworth, we share that. I had him come to Orlando we had let's see, this was it. It's the 50th anniversary of the Brown decision. So you when you do 54, are you doing Brown or the bus boycott? Is it 54 starts
I
with
do
Brown?
54 with Brown. 54
Yeah.
with Brown. Yeah.
It's always to me, it's always the Supreme Court cases that help me delineate where I am in the time period. Like
Yeah.
I've got, you got the Reconstruction time period, then you get the post-Reconstruction up to about Plessy, and then sort of Plessy to Brown, which is that movement you're talking about. I think the thing that I always understood was really hard to track the origins of the modern civil rights movement, right? Essentially, does it start
Yeah.
on Juneteenth? Like
I mean, he could make a
right,
case.
right.
He could make a case.
And when does it really end? And that was always something that when I was doing history, like in public, it was always kind of a part of it. But the idea being everyday people who were treated extremely poorly by habit, by cultural social habit,
Yeah.
and for whom any type of resistance was a physical, was a risk, was a genuine. I'm not saying it's not risky now. I just saying like,
Oh yeah. No,
getting in a
I'm
car to
following
go
you.
to a protest. And, Birmingham is where, for everybody's benefit, Fred Shuttlesworth was the head of the Birmingham civil rights movement almost the entire time. He took
Absolutely.
his job in Cincinnati right about the time that they came to Birmingham for Project C, if I'm correct. I think he was coordinating from away.
Just a little before.
He
Yeah,
had
just a
just
little
done
before.
it, but he was but Ahmad and I share him as an absolute hero. I call him the bravest man I ever met. So what I want you to do, I want you to tell me about Fred Shuttlesworth just a second. I want you to tell about the bump on, the bombing, the
Yeah.
determination. If you can drop a fire you can't put out, if not, I'll do that one. But like who is he? And he's the one out of Albany. SCLC did not have a great success in Albany,
No,
Georgia.
they
He's the
didn't.
one who said Bull Connor's going to take the bait.
Yeah.
It's time to come to Birmingham. So I'm going to get chills as you tell the story because it's one of my favorites of any history I've ever been privy to,
Reverend Shellsworth is one of the bravest people. I mean, when people start talking about who had the most courage in the movement, a lot of the actual leaders mentioned Shuttlesworth. Like Andy Young and C.T. Vivian and even King when he was, a lot they would talk about Jose Williams. They would talk about Fred Shuttlesworth. John Lewis would talk about Fred Shuttlesworth because he was like the backbone of the movement, and he was getting his head cracked open in the mid 50s, trying to do things in Birmingham, Alabama. He said the first first time he ever saw brass knuckles, he was getting hit with them.
Mm.
And this is
Hmm.
they tried to integrate Phillips High School in downtown Birmingham. That building is no longer there, which is a shame. Um, yeah, it's gone. I had to think about it for a second. Like, oh, it's gone. It might still actually might be there. But he was trying to integrate his kids, and they just mobbed him. Just beat him half to death. It's like 1957. This is anytime there was a gain somewhere else, he tried it. So after Montgomery, he set up to ride the buses like after Christmas in 56. And so you gotta understand how crazy Birmingham was, and Bull Connor, who had running the city with an iron fist as the police chief, right? And so, Fred had a target on him all the time. And so they planned this protest on the bus. They're gonna ride in the front seat in Birmingham. This is fresh off of what's happening in Montgomery, getting close to like there's a win in Montgomery already, okay? And so they bomb his house. And they planted these multiple sticks of dynamite on the cornerstone of the house, blow the whole foundation out from the home. Like the house basically just tilts on its side, and it's right where Reverend Shuttlesworth's bedroom is. And so, like the neighborhood thinks that they just killed Fred Shuttlesworth. So there's a ruckus going on outside. People are riding and they're starting to push. Cops are getting in the area, but people are talking about fighting cops, picking up rocks and throwing up bricks at this point because there's bricks in the street from the foundation. and it blows the floor out from under Fred. Like he's actually up, he's laying on the bed taking a nap, falls in a hole. His daughter was able to escape without serious injury because she was right there in the room. And Shuttlesworth crawls out of the hole after just getting literally blown up, walks outside, calms the people down, and tells them, "Don't throw a rock, don't do anything, don't. It, you gotta disperse. We're doing this in a nonviolent way. I'm here, and I'm okay. Y'all need to go home." And Bob, the very next day, he's on the bus
Wow.
after being literally blown up. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it. I'm just saying I might have needed an extra week or so. Like, give me a couple of days to make sure that I'm okay. But he did that. And so then after when you get to the Little Rock Nine, Arkansas, he tries to integrate schools. And they had to dive back in the car in 1957. So there's footage,
I'm
there's
seeing
literal
it.
footage of him getting beat up in front of
His wife too, right?
the
Is that
wife,
when she
kids,
got
everybody got
stabbed?
hit.
Yep.
One of the daughters got stabbed in the hip, or his wife got stabbed. Wife got stabbed in the hip. And so they all had to go to the hospital. What's wild though, in the footage, there's a guy holding Fred in the collar, reaching in his pants pocket, trying to grab brass knuckles. And that dude is Bobby Frank Cherry, who was one of the people convicted in the retrial of the bombing of 16th Street Baptist Church.
I thought that was name was familiar.
Yeah, so he's on video in 57 showing a
Beaten.
history of violence, history of violence. And so they
Wow.
they take Fred to the he got all kind of contusions. They're checking him out at the hospital and they're saying it's a wonder you're not dead. And he tells the doctor, "Well, the Lord knew I lived in a hard town, so he gave me a hard skull." And they having a meeting at a church. He checks him out himself out of the hospital and goes to the meeting and sits down, plops himself down on the pulpit and said, "Hey, y'all mad? Yeah, how many of y'all are mad?" And so people are like, "Yeah, I'm mad. Yeah, well, I'm not mad. How many of y'all got beat up today?" Nobody says anything. He says, "This is the cost of what we have to do. So we're going to keep doing this non-violently. And if any of you so much as break a window in response to this, I'm going to say that you did it to hurt the movement, and I'm not going to support you." And that is that kind of leadership. Like his push for nonviolence was one of the most violent things I've ever seen. because
Well
because
said.
nonviolence is as a violent act with Fred Shuttlesworth. Because after he got blown up, he was like, "Oh, the Lord has ordained this." Any fear he had just completely went out the window after that. And so he just put himself headlong into all kind of stuff.
If I recall, he went out to Anniston, didn't he, to go
Yeah.
like rescue the, I mean, like, yeah.
When the Freedom Riders got in trouble, he personally went into Anderson trying to help people get out. They sent vehicles up there to get people. He was involved in that particular situation with Freedom Rides. Even though he moved to Cincinnati, he was back here running Project C in Birmingham. He's the reason that King came, as you already alluded to, because Albany was a loss and they needed a victory. And people didn't want King to go to Birmingham, but they needed something to catch the the people, they needed something to work. And then Fred is in these meetings, he's like, "Hey, look, it's the time. Birmingham is the time because Bull Connor will not be able to control himself." And then we can do that here. And that's what happens. Reverend Shuttlesworth doesn't get nearly a lot of credit he needs to for helping to
Mm-mm.
structure these things. In fact, after the first round of kids getting arrested in early May of 63, you know, that week after the first round, when they sent, there was kids out there, and then some people who were not trained were out there as well. So there was a little bit of back and forth. If you ever hear about people throwing rocks or bottles back at police, those are the people from the neighborhood who had not gone through the training. Okay.
Mm.
And it's not the kids that went through the training. And so Shulesworth was on the block near where the institute was, and somebody says, "There goes a Rev, let's light him up." And so they put the hose on him, takes him off to the ground, and he hits like the side of 60th Street Baptist Church. Like it hurts. I mean, we talking about like, what, 50 pounds of pressure, 60 pounds of pressure coming out of the hose. So yeah, he's got to go to the hospital. So they're up in the room, and Kennedy is on the horn trying to tell King, you got to stop. You got to cut this out. I mean, what can we do to work this out? We got a tentative deal with the business owners in Birmingham. Let's work something out.
Yeah.
And the Reverend Shuttlesworth is like, you better not give way. You better not give. Listen, he cusses the underwear off of Dr. King and Abernathy in that hospital room. Okay. And he don't mind saying that he did. He taught you will not come here and give away everything we work for to pacify these folks. But it's getting out of control, right? Because the National Guard is about to move in on Birmingham. Like it's mobilized. They're about to go take over, the city, and they convinced Shuttlesworth to sign off on the deal, but he says only if I am present during the press conference. They do this at A.G. Gaston's Motel in the courtyard. There's pictures of King, Shuttlesworth, and Abernathy. After this is over with, Shuttlesworth goes back to the hospital. King leaves to go somewhere else. They bombed the Gaston Motel that night, thinking that people were still there. And so,
Wow.
yeah. And so that was a tide turner because martial law almost got declared and it didn't. But they were able to get some things moving. But it still wasn't the concessions that Shuttlesworth wanted, right? And so deep into Birmingham and Cincinnati's history, Shuttlesworth is involved. He becomes the head of the SPLC. No, I'm sorry, SCLC. I'm saying the
Yeah.
wrong thing. I'm saying the wrong thing.
Similar causes.
Yeah, SCLC, right? Southern Christian Leadership Conference. In the early 2000s. Early 2000s, he takes over, trying to help them get. Oh, so from really until he passes in 2011, like Reverend Fred was just really on the market. This has been a long story about ending with this. Um, so we used to do a program with a guy from the Bay Area, Jeff Steinberg. I still keep in touch with Jeff all the time. We talk about basketball now, though, instead of the civil rights movement. And so we would bring kids from the Bay Area to do a 10-day tour of the South every year. It's multiple times a year. And he would get Reverend Fred to come in and speak to the group when they were in Birmingham. And so one particular time, this is probably oh 04, oh 05. This might be 20. It's 20 years ago. 20 years ago. 21. And something happens with Reverend Schultz playing. He's like, "Look, I'm just stuck in Atlanta, and I would see if I can rent a car or something and get over there." And I'm like, "No, sir. I will come and get you and take you to Sheraton so you can be fresh when you talk to the kids. Please don't do that." And so early Sunday morning, I drive to Atlanta. I get his stuff, get his bag, say, "Hey, Rev, put the seat back, take a nap." It's like 2 hours, 20 minutes. I have you in Birmingham, but get some rest because I know you've been running hard because he had to do like overnight. And so he pulls the seat back and he just starts talking, Bob. And he talks for 2.5 hours about all of this. If I had a
Oh,
recording device, It was too early. We didn't have, it wasn't, we weren't here. And he just started talking about all of these things, that conversation in the hospital, uh, it just stopped the dealings with King
Oh.
and Abernathy. It was the most amazing conversation. I'm driving down I-20 like, oh wait, what you do? What did what? What happened after that, rep? It was he was just in a stream of consciousness and was just telling all these things. I'll never forget it as long as I live. It was one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of, and I did not have a way to record it.
But it's all
Yeah,
there. Like you literally sat with a library
I
and
sat with a library.
he read his book out loud to you, if
He
you will,
read his book
key
out.
moments. Uh, I'll give you my very quick, and I just
No,
for
go for it.
everybody's benefit to share this for you too. Reverend Shuttlesworth came to the History Center, and we had him come in 2004, 50th anniversary of the Brown decision. I've never had more people at an event. It was very mostly black, which was a shame, but also pretty freaking awesome, because
Yeah.
people felt it was comfortable. We'd worked really hard to change the dynamics of the relationship there over the time. So that was a success. We had overflow. He was not the most dynamic speaker, and we had sound system problems. And
Oh
I
yeah.
don't even think we recorded it, which kind of sucked. But the energy in the room and in the whole event, he was a rock star,
Yeah.
and everybody knew it. Like especially the black folk of the civil rights generation, particularly those who were younger. Like for whom he was. Everybody knew he knew King. But a piece. This is my Fred Shuttlesworth in car. I picked him up at the airport, brought him. He was very quiet and he was a little tired.
Mm.
Took him to his hotel. We went out to dinner, and he's telling stories, and he's talking about Ralph, and then he starts talking about Martin, and I'm like, who the fuck is Martin? And I'm like, oh my god, he's talking about Martin Luther King Jr. And it was the weirdest thing because I was like, oh, he, like same thing. He was there.
He
He
was
had
there.
broke bread with him.
Yeah.
And I have said before, I should reread it. Andrew Manis's book, A Fire You Can't Put Out, is
Oh,
is one
yeah,
of my
great book. Great book.
favorite historical biographies. And the piece, every time he got beaten up, when they called the fire alarm, that's where we have a fire you can't put out, and the bombing, and when he comes out and he's like, yeah, God saved me, so no, I'm you're not scaring me, I'm leaning into this. Like those are lessons in courage, their lessons in leadership, their lessons from history, that are life altering. They were for me, like
Absolutely.
today, like how can this guy, yeah.
It's that man was involved in everything that you can think of that was important to civil rights movement during that time frame.
And
Like
put himself in the way.
in harm's way.
Always put
In harm's
himself
way.
in harm's way. Um, these are the reasons, right? These stories are so remarkable to me. Of course, you got the students who actually, did the marching, or the Little Rock Nine who integrate Central High School. I had several of them at a conference I did at one point, which was really awesome. When you meet these veterans of this, you know,
Yeah.
of this movement, right? That did change. It changed world history. I think looking to it even as a world changing event, not even just in American history, it's hard to say, right? What's the most significant, and again, modern civil rights movement starts when does it start at Jamestown in 1619, right? Like, but but
Maybe
but but
you can
this
make a
right,
case.
the general concept being right, like we are always going to be like working toward this bigger than us, concept. And there, to me, is freedom and understanding. This is why you don't let police harm protesters, beat protesters, right? Not only what happens in Birmingham to the youth with the fire hoses and the dogs, what ends up happening at Kent State, or then when history repeats itself in Minneapolis. with the recent rounds of assassinations, essentially of government killings. And um, was the history difficult at all ever to talk about, frankly, in a public setting for you? Did it take some time to get used to not having to keep your guard up or down?
No. Um, I think because, well, definitely more of a rabble rouser back then, but I think I think because we're telling the truth. We're telling the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like, um, now did I have to maybe adjust adjust the language for the audience that I was talking to? And I'm only talking about young versus old. I'm not talking about white versus black or anything like that. I'm just saying like, you know, adapt some of it for younger audiences. Sure. I never moved away from what actually happened, no matter what audience we were talking to, because I think you needed to see it. And I had a presentation earlier this week, and I always used to say this when we're talking specifically about race and class. Like the race thing is itchy for everybody. It's itchy, and we have to be in a space where we'll take it. Um, race lands on everybody. It lands on us differently, but it lands on everybody. And it's the most successful social construct ever. Because we just fall into the box, man. We don't even question it. We just go and jump right into the box. And because we've been conditioned to do so. And so we try to create brave spaces. I've taken this from the work that my wife has done. And her quote is such, man, I love this quote. I keep telling people that my wife is the real rock star in this situation. I'm a peon. Like she's the one. Um, she said, we work in brave spaces because safe is subjective.
Say that one again for the people in the back. I like that one.
We
There's your
we
Earth
try
School lesson for the day.
we try to work in brave spaces because safe is subjective.
Oh, I
And we're
can't
going to be
wait to. Yeah.
brave. We're going to be brave to listen and respect and understand because safe is subjective. And so I try to create brave spaces for people to learn.
And that's within both the institutions that you roll with,
Right.
the formal work, but I think also probably within your life with your
Sure.
with your family. I'm assuming with your friends, those
Yeah.
sorts of things. You know, there's a courage. Courage is there's a courage with which I see you live, your truth and who
I
you are
appreciate it.
with that, and in creating like the space. So talk to me. So let's talk about next generation. Let's talk about across the board. You can talk about your children. You can talk about like like your peers and stuff. I'm working on this philosophy. I've been living to this for a while. You've heard me say it probably. Be who the younger you needed.
Mm,
Great way to kind of
mm,
think about where you are in life. And so
mm.
when my daughter is talking about her brand new job and these little particulars, I'm always able to say, let's zoom out a little bit, maybe, learn a lesson from this or something like, a variety of things. So I think that we've both, as teachers, mentors, you've given a lot back. I see it, like you have given professional service with very much consistency. I know you're in Rotary. I know what you give to your daughters. Um, you know, what's that look like? Yeah.
First of all, I love that quote. I wrote it down. Be the younger you need it. That's amazing. I guess inadvertently I try to do that, but for me, Bob, is really I had a lot of people help me, look out for me, open a door for me. Um, and you're supposed to pass that on. That's how I was raised. That's how my parents raised me. Like, number one, family is everything. You better take care of your family. Number two, you're gonna respect everybody and treat everybody the same, no matter what they do, who they are. And number three, you better put something back. You better put something back. And so I still live those lessons, man. And I try to make sure I know people gave me a helping hand. I know folks reached down and grabbed me and helped me do stuff. I know people grab my shirt tail when I was about to do something really stupid and pull me back from the abyss. And so it's just embedded in me that if I can, especially if there's young people, I have, as my wife said, I have way too many mentees. That's probably true. Um, but I want people to be their best selves and win. And that's the only thing I want back from them is to win. That's it. You know, just keep winning and do better and get where you need to go. So I'm still in this at my kids too. They better treat everybody the same. You know, they better help when they can. And I have my kids they're salt of the earth, man. Like I'm very proud of my little girls who are not little, 20 and 17. Will be 21 and 18 this year, so it'll be
Girl
crazy.
power.
I have two adults, which is kind of crazy, man. But they are. I'm building. I have built them to be warriors, man, and it's warriors in a different way. You know, not necessarily to kick somebody in the head, but to stand on their own and um, be leaders and not followers, and to um, not be swayed by peer pressure, and to have their own minds and disagree with things that they don't agree with openly, respectfully, but openly, and not let people walk on them. And if somebody else is having an issue, you stand in, and they've already proven that. They've proven that in grade school. So um, I'm very proud of what they're doing, and they get a lot of this out of from their mother too. So I won't take all the credit off of that. But I try to pass it on to the other young people that we come in contact with, or people who are young at heart who can just use a hand. So in our current role as the executive director of Historic Mitchellville Freedom Park, we have an unwritten goal with what we're doing with this history of the first town of self-governing formerly enslaved people in the United States. For people who can't see hope in their everyday operations, or maybe opportunity seems limited to them, they can come to the park, go to a program, hear about this story, hear about the importance of it, and say, well, shoot, if these people can do it, I can too. So we want that to be an inspirational thing that people to walk away with and feel emboldened to be more. So, and that's kind of my motto, man. That's what I live by.
The boils down to, right? It's two great commitments. Love God, love your neighbor.
Yeah,
There's an action step that's required in that. Loving God is not something you can really show anybody other than God, but you can by loving your neighbor, which is
exactly.
essentially,
That's how you show
I
it.
mean, it all sort of goes back in that circle. You still got a little bit of time?
I'm good. And
Okay.
and just to offer that too is do no harm. Just like the medical profession, just how I try
Yeah.
to do no harm.
That I put up a thing. I was a couple weeks ago down in Florida, and I went to the historic site. It really, in my dad's hometown, more or less, real important to us. And there's a quote there about leave the world a better place, which I remember seeing when I was a kid. Like, yes, that's what I want to do. Um, the Let's talk for a second on your end, the importance of art and culture. Music, you can throw music in there. You don't have to get all super heavy in music. I can bring the music here, but you're an artist,
I am.
and a very good artist, as I understand it.
I'm
You're
okay.
trained in the fine art. I know you as a badass museum professional, leader of institutions, but this is a side of yours that's there Obviously, you have nurtured some time. So how does that fit into this thing? And really, then like, how does it fit into your concepts of community? Both the concepts of community you're creating for yourself and or institutionally or just worldwide.
Well, I'm an arts advocate, so I'm all for arts and music programs in schools and community art centers. And I think it's important because you have kids who probably just dredging their way through school, but maybe that art class or that music class gives them, they want to go to school just to get to that one class, man, and that one class can help them get through the day. I have an art degree and uh, pencil, graphite, that was my thing, but I almost became a photographer. It's something about the power of image that's always stuck with me. Um, and I have always loved music and all different kinds, but I'm a hip hop head. It's only 2 years older than I am. And and so we kind of grew up together. And so I'm steeped into that, but I also, given that being said, my favorite artist of all time is Stevie Wonder. That's my number one person, and I have inflicted this in my oldest. She is a big Stevie Wonder person at 20 years old. Um, one of the cool gifts she got over Christmas was my wife bought her like it was a record player, but you can do all kind of stuff with it, like headphones and everything. And my father-in-law gave her Fulfilling This First Finale, which is if you could say any Stevie project is underrated because there's no such thing. But if you think about the classical period from like 69 to 76 or whatever, or the 80 if you want to include Holiday in July. But the classic period, that's one of the underrated albums there. And it's one of her favorite albums. And he gave her the vinyl out of his stash during Christmas, which is real cool. And so now she's potentially looking at one of the designs. Like there's some birds on the album cover, like getting that tattoo. Like she's deep. She's a deep Stevie fan, man. Because I've been playing Stevie the whole time she's been alive. And so that's been cool to see that. And then the two of us connect on who I believe to be a musical genius. Um, and that period is just kind of
One of the most important
unmatched.
artists in American history, without doubt.
Oh,
Without
most
doubt.
most definitely, most definitely. It's always cool for me to around January, February, especially January, for young people to find out the meaning of happy birthday. Like for real. They've heard his version forever, but now then they get to see the connection and how that song actually helps. His advocacy actually helps to get that holiday to be a national holiday. Um, yeah, yeah. Some big Stevie Wonder. The best concert I ever been to. Oh my gosh, was this '09? It was a birthday present from my wife. We were in this store and she said, I need help on this aisle. And she hid tickets behind something that she wanted to pull down for her.
Nice.
And so we saw him at an amphitheater right outside of Atlanta.
Lakewood.
Maybe it was Lakewood because it's been a minute now. No opening act. Got the Moog and keyboard back to back. There was a young guy who was fighting cancer. He had brought him up on stage and he said, "You're gonna hang with me the whole time. So when I switch, because he was moving back and forth from the Moog to the keyboard. When I switch, you switch." And so this kid was on stage with him the whole time. 3 hours just hits. It was the most incredible thing, man. And there was these two really young, I'm talking like early 20 white guys in front of us. I'm like, they're kind of young to be Stevie people, but okay, cool. Everybody. And so it was like, and I was sitting there trying to think, okay, why y'all? There's one thing in particular. When Higher Ground starts, these two kids jump out of their seats and do the most vicious air guitar you have ever seen in your lives. The entire song. I mean, they are going to town. My wife and I are dying laughing, but that's why they were there. They were there,
I
higher
forgot.
ground.
Yeah, and like around that same time, most of us, many of my generation, come to that song through the Red Hot Chili Peppers cover,
Yeah, you're right,
not
right.
that. So,
And that's that's
perhaps
probably how they got there.
that's perhaps why they were there on that particular one. Because and that was a banger. When I learned it was a Stevie Wonder song, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, that's awesome. Superstition I knew because of Jeff Beck, I think.
Hmm.
Um, you
Another
know,
very, very, very sampled song. There's a lot of
yeah,
covers of Superstition.
yeah, yeah, and rightfully so when you write bangers like that for sure. Um, hey man,
Incidentally,
yes,
before we move off here, I think I said this to you before, but Midnight Rider is my favorite Allman Brothers song. Bar none, bar none.
it's a banger. It's a banger. It's enough. Here's how you know like your band is good because it's got songs that everybody knows and likes. Like when you get a couple good songs that people know, Midnight Rider's an all-timer. That's crazy to me. Here, I'll shill the book here real quick. Play All Night, Dwayne Allman and the Journey to Fillmore East. Um, it's crazy to me they didn't release that as a single because to me that and again, I've listened to their records billions of times, but that's like the most obvious single in the history of singles on that album. I'm like, how could you not put that on the radio? It's like 2 minutes and 45 seconds. It's got and they didn't release it as a single until like a year later when the album At Fillmore East that I wrote about came out. So like it was, yeah, absolutely on
See,
Midnight Rider. Okay.
I didn't know. You just told me something. I didn't know that wasn't released as a single when the album first released.
No, it became and what's funny is they lost their publishing, like their original publisher, the original label folded in the 80s. So like they have no control over what got sold. It was in a beer commercial in the 90s. And I remember a friend of
And
mine was
that's
like,
why I got connected. That
Michelob.
com
Yep.
that commercial got me on that song.
A buddy of mine actually who just texted me while we're talking. Also same deal, same song. He goes, "Oh my God, this song wasn't one they played on the radio a lot." Uh, um, let's talk about Mitchellville real quick.
Sure.
This is an important spot that there's a very convoluted like way to explain what it is. The first, but it's a freedmen's community in the classical
Sure.
sense of the term, right? This was
Sure.
so, what is Mitchellville? And, you moved from Birmingham at this place. So it really, I know means a lot to you. Birmingham's history, civil rights history is really important. You pick up stakes and kind of go to South Carolina, where some of the earliest of the emancipation movement, self-emancipation happens, during the Civil War era. So you're going way back in history at that point, 100 years, literally,
Yeah.
in terms of the history you're telling. So yeah, let's talk about Mitchellville. We'll kind of close it out on this, like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
it is and
Absolutely.
how it kind of fits what we're talking about here.
Well, Mitchellville, as I mentioned a little earlier, is the first town of self-governing, formerly enslaved people in the United States. And I know that's a mouthful, like you said, a little convoluted, but there were other towns that predate but don't fit this bill. So you had Fort Mose in St. Augustine, Florida in 1783, but Fort Mose, at that point, Florida was a Spanish territory, not part of the United States. Seneca Village, where Central Park is right now in New York, 1825. But that was established by blacks who had been free for a while. And then, of course, it got Manifest Destiny and turned into, Central Park. Like a lot. Don't get us started on this. We can go all day about Lake Martin, Lake Lanier, all these, they used to be black towns and now are lakes. Lake Lanier, don't swim in it because it's haunted. Um, I digress. I digress. The spirit's coming up and taking people down. Um, but this is formed 2 months before the Emancipation Proclamation. So the people were free before everybody was. And comes out of the Battle of Port Royal, which happens in 1861. Frees Hilton Head from Confederate control. Um, Hilton Head is the Department of the South for the Union Army. I didn't realize that till I got here. I mean, it sounds like something we should be getting in a history book, but we don't. So there was 30 to 40,000 Union troops on Hilton Head. So people started escaping from other places to come to Hilton Head because nobody's going to chase them. There's 30 to 40,000 Union troops up here, right? And so the commander at the time had this bright idea that he would take all this influx of people because they started flocking and overcrowding becomes a thing. David Hunter says that he will free all colored men, using the terminology at the time, that will pick up a rifle and fight for the Union Army. He don't have this power, Bob. So he gets away with it for about 2 or 3 months. Then he gets in trouble. It's a scandal because people find out. And Lincoln and Hunter are friendly. Lincoln reassigns Hunter to keep him, in the mix. And Ormsby Mitchell comes in. Mitchell is a military man. Mitchell is an astronomer. I think he helps to start the Cincinnati Observatory, and he's also an abolitionist. And so he gives these people who were considered contraband of war at the time, uh, nearly 300 acres of property. He says, this is your land. You build on it, you grow on it, create your own set of laws, schools, all the things. And so he gives them access to the Union Army sawmill. They started building about 4 to 5 houses a day. One of the contraband actually won a competition between them and the army to figure out who was going to design all the houses. So they designed their own spaces. Each family got a quarter acre of a lot to build on. So these people went from being property to owning property, which is the most amazing concept. They had their own set of laws. These people even had organized trash pickup, man, in the 1860s and 70s. And they're doing this in the state that started the Civil War, during the conflict, and during slavery. This should not be happening, but it did. And these people at its height, there were about 3,000 folks in Mitchellville between 62 and 68, even though that number would fluctuate. About 500 homes, 4 schools, 4 churches. It was a thing that got national attention. There was newspaper articles in Philly, in New York, in Chicago, in DC. And hurricane in 1893 wipes everything out.
Okay.
And so even after that, it was always considered Mitchellville neighborhood. People moved back. Clara Barton is the reason they got back on his feet because during the war, she was a nurse on Hilton Head and knew about Mitchellville.
Mm.
And so the government wasn't moving quick enough to repair because everybody did it like this. And so she single-handedly started a national fundraising movement to get Beaufort County and Hilton Head back on his feet. And William Lloyd Garrison visited Mitchellville when the war was about to end. Harriet Tubman, after the Combahee River Raid, where they freed 756 people, she brought 300 of those folks back to Hilton Head. They settled at Mitchellville. So you got these American luminaries who have connectivity to our site, and people just don't know enough about it. So our job is to change that. Out of that original 300, we got 36 acres of property left, and we're using it to talk about how important this thing is as an American site in a 21st century context. So this year, in celebration of the America 250th, our thematic approach is America 250, Mitchellville as a landmark in American history. So our tenets are freedom, democracy, citizenship, opportunity. They've been that for almost 9 years. These are American ideals. They don't get old. They don't get tired. They do get challenged. They do get threatened. But we all understand what those four mean. And so that's what this story embodies for people. So we are building on site. I've got about 3 capital projects going on right now, which was not my intention, but it is what it is. And they're going well. We got our first major building set to open in the fall. It is an archaeological research facility and auditorium, processing lab for excavations, multi-purpose room for us to have programming, which will seat about 84 people theater style, and an office wing. Again, this fall will be when that opens. We just open a garden, interpretive garden in December. We have structures out there that are aligned with the Army Corps of Engineers grid. There's about 5 different ways that you can see how Mitchellville houses would have looked. So these are life-size metal structures like you do at the National Park Service. but the doors and windows have interpretive panels. We have a church area, which also has a 4,000-year-old indigenous imprint in the same space that will be finalized this spring. There's a lot happening at the site. And so I'm glad to be a part of this situation. It was a grassroots organization. I am the inaugural executive director. Got here in June of 2017. Left Birmingham, left a very safe position in Birmingham. They come to something that only had a 2-year time frame to create a master plan document for this. We were just very fortunate to get the money to do it, build a plan. We're in motion. So for those who are listening, watching, when you come to Hilton Head, come to Mitchellville.
We're definitely gonna put that in the queue there for sure.
Yeah.
And what you've really tied up in a nutshell is like everything we do is that crossroads of like, look, we're gonna create a space within this giant world that we have to save and preserve and reflect upon the past. And I find the past, there's a lot of salvation there, partially because it's humbling, right? It makes you realize like
Yeah.
it ain't just about me. It is about me. Like I think
Yeah.
that's like you said, you're finding yourself in there, but it ain't just about me. I mean, I can do my part, and we'll continue to. And representation meaning you want to find yourself in that story. You want to be able to. You want to be able to.
It's important.
Yeah.
It's important.
I also, we talk about this billions of times, right? None of this is either or also, right? Like I remember people would be like, well, when's White History Month? This February's Black History Month. When's White History Month? I'm like, every month,
The other 11 months.
right? Like it's, well, why do they have to have their own month? Well, because it wasn't represented in any other month. Like these are, or as I was raised, states rights. Civil War was about states' rights. States' right to do what? Like let's
Keep slaves.
let's look a
Let's
little bit
talk about
deeper
it.
in the surface here. When we go through, but the like you said, there's power in the story. There's power in the stories we tell ourselves. There's power in the stories we remember. And I mean, I love that you went back to, right? Because how can you not? This Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, right? Our codification of laws guaranteeing rights of citizenship to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness
Right.
under the Constitution. Whatever that looks like is where the struggle constantly happens. And we've, fortunately, in some ways, begun backsliding in some of those, some of those things. But what you said is like, is it changed, human history and the way that we think about things. And I was stunned over the course of the last decade, Trumpism decade, whatever, right? How important concepts like the rule of law suddenly became again, right? Like it's just these things that you take for granted. Accountability, the rule of law, those sorts of things. And history really matters in these moments, but it does not in any way predict what the future is going to be. It's in a lot of ways, it's very unsettling to have the historical mindset that I have. I'm certain you do too. Oh, here we go again. And then it's also a little bit freeing to know, again, we have no idea what the consequences of any action are personally or corporately or politically or anything else. We can, however, talk about our interpretation of the consequences of other people's decisions
Right.
and indecision.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Indecision being one of those things that we had to focus on.
We learn a lot from that, right?
Yeah.
Like we do learn a hell of a lot from that. Ahmad, my dude, it has been a joy. I don't know if you're going to be on the call in 40 minutes. I may or may not.
Yeah.
I'm going to go I might go clear my head, but dude, it was just a pleasure, dude, just chopping it up with you, talking from the crossroads. And
Absolutely.
I have a backlog now, so I actually have to launch very soon, and that's making me pucker just a little bit.
Just a little pucker.
Yeah, just a tiny bit. Like put my face out there in the world one more time. But it's been funny, and like I said, I talked to Richard a couple weeks ago, man, and dude, he started preaching, which Richard does, and God bless him, but he started preaching about the field and all this. And I was like, no, man, I don't give a shit about any of that stuff anymore in a public
Yeah.
forum. Like,
Yeah.
I want to talk
Yeah.
about people. So
Yeah.
we're re-recording actually. It's funny, I screwed up the recording anyway, but we're re-recording. But
Well, I think it's
like,
important. I think your approach is important. Um, and yeah, man. Well,
we have lessons. I think the way that we do things and think about things just offers a lesson toward like a way out. That's the way I see it.
yeah.
Um, my people are very interesting people, and I can fill a calendar year of podcasts with conversations with my friends, and I can fill a month of them with conversations with my friends. You know, so.
Listen, you're gonna knock this out. No need to pucker.
Thank you,
I
my
am gonna be
brother.
at the call on the call at 4. If you can join us for a couple minutes, man, just jump in. I think I want to thank you again for having the presence of mind of setting that call up, even though it's morphed into more of a, hey, let's check in with each other and make sure we're all good. I have a lot of value for it. And I'm telling you, man, I tell people all the time, unless it's a board situation, a money situation, I don't miss the 4 o'clock meeting, or I'm traveling and I just can't get there.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's even if it's only 3 of us on, I'm just like, all right, just I don't have to do anything except hear what's going on in people's lives. I care about all these folks on the call. Hope everybody's doing well. I don't have to make any crazy decisions.
yeah. No prep, no prep.
There's
It's
no
just like
prep. I just get
quick
to
on
be
in,
just jump on and be myself. So thanks again for
my
having the
brother.
presence of
Appreciate it.
mind
Yeah.
to set that up 6 years ago.
And it was the right mix of people. I
Yeah.
think it was important. I was all in on diversity and inclusion back then, which I always am, but I was very intentional back then to making sure everything I was doing had a touch of that. It wasn't intentional that, um, it was intentional to make sure we had the mix, which I think is a very critical part of the conversation. That I think that's been one of the life-changing parts of the conversation.
Oh,
Bro, you
indeed.
talking about George Floyd just that day when that went down? My life I've never been. It's like reading civil rights. Like just you speaking frankly with us was life changing for me. It was
I appreciate that.
yeah, no, it was legit. It was like, yeah, I can't unsee or unhear what I just heard from my friend about and everything I knew.
Yeah.
Like everything I knew. So all right, bro, we'll talk to you in a half an hour if we do. Good to see you, man.
All right,
Be
man.
well.
Thanks for asking
See
me to
you.
do this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, loved it, loved it.